Good morning and thank you for joining us. I'm Leroy Du, welcoming you to Sunrise.
Amayo Makinde, good morning. It's a Saturday morning, it's 9 o'clock. I don't know if you had your own cocoa this morning.
I'm envious.
No, please go ahead, you have liberty.
Because I'm going to have cocoa after the program.
Okay, so which one of them, is it the budget? What's the budget for the cooking for Christmas? What's your budget for Christmas?
Leave my budget out of it. We're talking about Nigeria's budget of 20 trillion. And I'm wondering, okay, when I heard the news yesterday, I just thought, so where are we going to get the funds to fund this budget? 20 trillion.
Well, Nigeria has... why do people borrow? They borrow because they can't pay back. They have the potential.
Are we not overexposed already?
No. According to the debt management officers at the Ministry of Finance, Federal Ministry of Finance, we are not yet close to the 40% or whatever English word they use quota. So we're still
good. We can borrow some more.
However, the debt management office, if I remember correctly, are also concerned. I mean, that concern came up some months ago. Concerned about the spate of borrowing and that it's getting a little concerning for them. So if they are saying that, and when we say federal government it's a moving truck of many parts. So the Ministry of Finance is certainly one of them. But to the issue that you raised, clearly borrowing is going to be a part of it. And if I also heard correctly, I thought the president also mentioned something about selling some assets, some national assets to meet some of the obligations of the budget. That's aside the revenue that the federal government is hoping to collect. But what I don't know, what I didn't quite hear from, well, that's to answer that question, first of all.
There was also talk about the subsidy, wasn't there?
Yeah.
I thought the president did mention that subsidy was going to be taken out next year. But there's a provision for subsidy.
Yes, maybe there is a provision for subsidy.
Oh, God, now we're talking tongue-in-cheek. Yeah, okay.
Maybe, just maybe. I'm not sure, really, because, I mean, after the president presents the budget, then there is also budget analysis.
Yes.
So the Ministry of Finance is going to come out and say this and this and this and this. So
explain everything to us clearly.
Everything to us clearly. So when that happens, then we can bring our forks and knives, the big and the small ones, and ask the finance minister.
Okay.
How far?
How far? Okay, talking about subsidy. I don't know if you saw those footages on was it on the news? On the news.
Which of them?
Yesterday. Yeah, I'm still talking about crude oil.
Oh.
Our mainstay. And those huge pipes that we saw leading, well, I would like to say, leading from nowhere to the shore, to the port.
It is leading from somewhere to somewhere. No.
Leading from the oil wells.
It's leading from somewhere to somewhere, straight up. There is no. What are you talking about? Listen to the GMD of the NNPC. Something that he said that caught my attention, and it was very, very striking. Okay, it says. In the course of the clampdown within the last 6 weeks, 395 illegal refineries have been deactivated. 274.
395.
Yes, illegal refineries. So they have been functional, and where they are, I don't know. Where it's just
yes, I wonder to whom they're supplying their fuel
and who gave them fuel. Anyway, we'll come to that.
Okay.
So there's 274 reservoirs destroyed, 1,561 metal tanks destroyed, and 49 trucks seized. Now, here's the catch. The most striking of all is the 4-kilometer illegal oil connection line from Forketer's terminal into the sea, which had been in operation Undetected for 9
years.
solid years,
Okay.
he said.
How can it have been undetected? One would assume that these people who drill oil know how much they're drilling. So when they're drilling, are they not wondering where it is going? That what they're drilling is not what is landing in their ships that are taken off from the ports. And this has been going on for 9 years.
You know,
I mean, heads should be rolling. Heads should be rolling.
I think I want to believe that the federal government and its agencies, ministries, departments, and all would know that Nigerians aren't fools, aren't stupid. So if it's happened for 9 years, it means that it started before this APC government came into power.
Yes.
And according to the GMD of the NNPC Limited, it's been on for more than 22 years, all in this Fourth Republic. In other words, it's been on well before the administration, the PDP administration of Obasanjo came into power. That's the implication of what the GMD is saying. So if that had been on for so long, on a particular scale, the 395 refineries that were destroyed didn't just start all at the same time. One, two,
became 10, became 20,
50, 100, and on and on. So how come we didn't clamp down on all of it at the time? You know what I still maintain? I still maintain that generally ministries, departments, and agencies, federal, state, and local, work in silos. If there was collaboration between the federal government and the state governments, a Delta state government, for instance, would have gone out and shut them down the same way the Rivers State governor went out and shut down those illegal refineries he discovered. Now, is it every governor in Nigeria that can go to any of these oil formations and say, enough of this? We have a governor in Delta State, for instance. Was there ever a time that the Delta State government raised an alarm saying, this is happening in my state? Is it the ones that are happening in Bayelsa, the illegal refineries? Is it that the government didn't know? So if the collaboration was on between the federal government and the state governments, otherwise it's easy for any illegal refinery operator to say, look, state government, it's not your business. It's oil, okay? It's not under the concurrent, what's that list again? Concurrent list. It's under the exclusive, it's not none of your business. So that, in my opinion, would be one way to look at this issue. For this to have happened for 13, that pipeline, it's not poor people who are looking for food. No. It's not what's those guys that we call the militants?
Militants. No, it's not militants, because that is big. That is big. And having brought this out to Nigerians, Nigerians are still waiting for government to start naming names of those who are behind this after they have shut down the operation. And how do other countries monitor things like this? I've not heard of any drones, because we still hear of vandals breaking pipes and siphoning products and all that. And it's high time there was technology behind monitoring all this.
Once you bring in technology,
especially since Nigeria is broke.
Well, I don't think it's not everybody that cares whether Nigeria is broke or not.
Well, we need to care.
Well, we need
because we're borrowing money that maybe even our grandchildren are not going to be able to pay.
We need to care, but right now, do we? If the people who are these guys are not, I mean, no one can come to your backyard without you knowing about it. The fellows who are involved in this illegal pipeline, illegal theft, I don't know, can we have legal theft? And so for the fun of it, this illegal theft, for that to be going on, there are collaborations between some of us who are Nigerians.
What we saw on TV wasn't a small operation. those things didn't take 1 week to lay. Some people living in those areas must have seen something, must have heard something. Well, maybe they thought it was government. Now, government, they build pipeline for the back of our house.
So it's every...
It is possible.
It is possible, but then it is also possible it is not possible. Because the people, the militants would know. No, come on, the people aren't daft. You see this thing called intelligence. People are not daft. People know what's going on. Let's not deceive ourselves that people, that we can't fool Nigerians.
Maybe they were...
The well, maybe. And for the lid to have been blown open now, it means
maybe they were not paying enough.
What, not going.
They were not keeping up on the payments.
Maybe there is incoherent conversation between their own federal government and the other side's ASU.
Yes, the River State palaver. I mean, well, they said he wasn't even a governor, so we can't even say ex-governor Omehia. So he's just Mr. Celestine Omehia has been asked to pay back approximately 695,000 naira, monies which were paid to him as what? What is it called? Is it pension?
Call it entitlement.
Entitlement
as
ex-governor. And he's got 7 days to pay back 695 million.
I see.
Whoa.
Good luck to him.
That is not chicken change, as they say.
Not even ram change.
And the governor has signed to it, has assented to it.
You see, there is a place for politics. How did he become governor at the time which the Supreme Court has annulled? In other words, for those 6 months, that government never happened. Oh, God Almighty. So 6 months of my life deleted from history. I mean, that's the way it sounds.
But where has the state been since 2008? Or
now,
whenever it was?
I said...
that they're now waking up to this now.
According to Governor Wike, the former governor, Rotimi Amechi, didn't recognize, Omehia as a former governor, so didn't really give him anything. Perhaps it was just the Wike government that was doing it. But you see, the point of the matter is, how did that happen in the first place? Sometimes some things just don't make sense to me. For God's sake. Okay, so he became candidate through the back door. He wasn't supposed to be the candidate that the party would field. So the party fielded him, and he became governor, or rather, the party won because the party substituted one person's name for another. Now the Supreme Court took him out. Amechi spent 8 full years. What does that mean? It means that the previous government never existed in the first place because it wasn't subtracted from the government, from the 8 years of Governor Amechi at the time. So some things just don't make sense to me. How in the universe would that happen to me? That I would go and put myself out, not considering what if this happens in the future? Which lawyer advised them that they could? Why are you looking at me like that?
Because I'm thinking, I mean, lawyers have to eat, man.
Oh, even if it is something that's going to embarrass me, the client, later. Come on, man.
Lawyers have to chop.
It's just, in my opinion, it's just some desperation that should not happen.
Being a lawyer is a job,
Yeah.
It's a job.
Yeah.
They do that for a living.
I see. So they don't let me say what some people, because some people say lawyers lie. I don't want to say that because that's probably not
You've
true.
already said it.
Okay.
Yes.
So one thing about that matter, I can't get around the fact that, the Mr. Omehia now has to, he's a former governor. He doesn't have the kind of, does he still have the kind of influence that he had? Okay, will he now go back to the people, some of his allies in the PDP and say, look, pay back, give me some of this money and all of those things? Now, it also brings the government of the day into some form of disrepute because right now, the government recognized him. Now, the government has been told not to recognize him. Yeah. So all the money he paid the government before, he now has, the government paid him. He now has to refund all. The government is the government that recognized him sympathetic to his plight. Will the government also now say, okay, we're going to put in the book? Yeah, we're going to put in the books that you have paid, but don't worry about it. I don't know. I don't know, man.
Ouch.
I'm just saying.
Ouch.
Hey, no.
Ouch.
Sorry, before we go into the lineup, we should thank teachers. It was World Teachers Day.
Yes, World Teachers Day. I mean, I saw a beautiful video. I don't know if you saw it about the pilots. Did you see it?
No.
Oh, okay. Pilots in Turkey flying, and the instructor was on board. And they all just brought him flowers to say thank you. Apparently, he had been in the flying school for forever. Yeah. And he had taught most of the pilots in the Turkish airline fleet. And when they arrived with flowers and they were hugging, and he was just crying like a baby. You know, because they all came to say thank you very much. Thank you.
You know, the question that I was going to ask you is, what memory of your own teacher, any of your teachers do you have? Oh,
I have memories of a lot of them, my dear. Many who did nothing but scold. Many who did nothing but encourage. You know, but whichever way you look at it, we are where we are today.
Because of them.
Because of those teachers.
There is one woman that well, three. One was Mrs. Adekunle, who taught me health science. The last time I saw her was when I was in secondary school. But she always said something. I'm going to try to translate it. The thing where you go chop for dinner, where you can nibble on at lunch, you know, talking about morality. That look, you are going to enjoy all of this by the time you get married and all of those things. Don't mess up your lives when you are young. Another person that I will never forget is my principal at the time, Mr. Popola. And he was the one that kept using a word that I will never forget. Incorrigible students. Incorrigible students.
For a young student, that's a big word.
I will never forget it. Incorrigible students. Another principal, Mr. Adisa. My students, some of you will go to the school farm, so steal our yam. I will never forget.
To steal the yam?
Yam. You know? So,
well, happy Teachers Day to all the teachers out there. We know that many people don't want to be teachers anymore because they say your reward is in heaven, but there'll be no us without teachers.
Absolutely.
There'll be no country without teachers. We need teachers, and we need good teachers. If you have a calling, that's all I'm going to say.
Absolutely. We just have to appreciate it. There's a caption that I saw earlier in the week. There will be no profession without teachers. So we can say that teaching is the mother of all professions.
All professions, yes.
There will be no profession whatsoever without teachers, and that has to be given to. So it beats my imagination how we treat teachers, what conditions of service, where they work and how they work, how we treat them with ignominy. You know, it's a revered profession. I can't imagine off the top of my head now. I don't want to imagine. I've never been there, but I'm trying not to imagine how the National Teachers Institute in Kaduna would look like right now. Is this something that you want to proudly go to?
Proud of.
Is this something that you can compare with an MBA? Is this something you can compare with an ICANN? You know, and if these are the people that mold other professions, at least create the foundations.
They mold the lawyers you're talking about who are members of MBA.
Exactly. So,
you know,
if that's the way we treat them, I don't know if it is something that, you know, we want to give due attention to. Primary school teachers, nursery school teachers, primary school teachers, secondary school teachers, and now ASU, because they are also teachers.
They are all teachers.
So what kind of attention we're giving to them will determine what direction we go as a nation.
As they say, breath. Now, the menu. We're going to be looking at efforts to solve the flooding problems to start with.
About time. And then, of course, we will be talking about teachers, focus on the quality of teachers' training.
And it is that time of the year again where the Arise women come to talk about their annual conference.
On lifestyle today, yes, that's what we're talking about. Family life and parenting. You see that one that starts with P? It's a big...
That is the main one.
Yeah.
And then we have an artist of the week, and all I can tell you is that he is a he. And in the film industry in Nigeria, he's a very big he.
The way you sounded that he...
Yes, sir. He's a big he.
Well, I got my own cup of cocoa. You need to go get yours as well. She doesn't have one for now. You have a bottle of water right beside her. We'll be back after now.
One day, our Naija go good. Now so them they talk good. One day, our mumu go do. Now so we talk.
Well, I mean, viewers can't even wait for us to get started. They're sending in comments already. This one is from Mrs. Davis, who is watching us from London. What is going on, Nigeria? Despicable country and people.
No, I take exception.
Nigerians aren't stupid. Please, no, they were complicit from day one, she says.
Nigerians aren't stupid, I maintain. But complicit, maybe. Because, I mean, talk about this flooding problem, for instance.
And talking about those pipelines.
And talking about those pipelines.
Nobody knew about those pipelines?
Not everybody knew.
Some people knew.
Let's talk about flooding.
That's being complicit.
Yes, yes. Although the pipeline also leads into the waters. But, you know, where the Nigerians are complicit about the flooding is an issue for concern. The Lagos State government continues to talk about silting the drainages simply because people continue to load all kinds of garbage
Trash
into it. So that's a complicity that I agree with. But, you know, 10 years ago, the worst flooding in more than 40 years in the country claimed 431 lives.
I remember that flood.
And displaced 2 million people.
I remember.
That's according to the nation's
Governor ex-Governor Fashola was governor of Lagos State at the time, and actually I remember him declaring a holiday because people couldn't even get to work. Everywhere was underwater.
So how bad is this year's flooding? At least 500,000 Nigerians are affected by flooding in 29 of Nigeria's 36 states. And farmers say the rising waters will push food bills higher in a nation where millions are falling into food poverty in the past 2 years. The rainy season usually runs from July to September, but many will tell you everything has changed.
No, that's from about April, actually.
Oh, well. Don't worry, they usually.
Usually, okay, usually.
So every rain poses the threats of devastation and destruction across the country, but and of course lives and all of that is lost to it. So this year several people have been killed across the country, hundreds of residential buildings taken, cars and other vehicles destroyed, some submerged
and washed away.
You know, too many things to look at. I mean, it's like, you know, a network of activities all at once. But let's have a conversation around this, because it's not that we didn't know this was going to happen, but here we are. We have 3 gentlemen join us to have this conversation this morning. Engineer Clement Nze. Clement Nze is DG, Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency. He's in Abuja studio along with Dr. Onumole Bandele Abdullahi, who is Director of Special Duties at the National Emergency Management Agency. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning. We also have with us... you're welcome. We also have Sulaiman Arigbabu, who is Secretary, Header Resource Center. He joins us from here in Lagos. Thanks for joining us this morning, Mr. Arigbabu. Let's begin with you, Engineer Nze. We know that, I mean, from time to time we get information from those agencies such as yours, you know, the hydrological services, the meteorological agency, always telling us that these things are going to happen. We're going to have high floods and all of that this year. So one wonders if the issues that we have been told about, if it is possible to have gone ahead of it without it getting as bad as it became.
Thank you so much for having me. I think we are getting to the point where we will become more serious with weather predictions, as is obtainable in other climes, where people, even before they start out of their houses, they look out for weather prediction for the day. That will guide them in their movement, direction they may have to take. Earlier this year, the two main relevant government agencies at the federal level that, if I may say, that do interrogate nature, the thing that's going to happen in the atmosphere, what happens on ground with regards to our rivers, they were out early enough to set the tone of what to expect in the course of the year. The Nigerian Meteorological Agency, NIMET, came out February 15th to, paint the picture of what to expect, most likely. And my own agency, the Nigerian Hydrological Service Agency, later followed suit. And the Honorable Minister of Water Resources that did the unveiling or the public presentation of our prediction, the annual flood outlook, issued warnings, issued letters to each state governor in Nigeria and the relevant ministries like agriculture, environment, aviation, informing them for the state governors the specific locations in their states that they should watch out for in the course of the rainy season when it establishes across the country. Those letters were authored by him, signed and sent to the governors, and they were informed the things likely to happen and the necessary measures that they need to take. Yes, granted, we talk about climate change. We may not have seen it, the magnitude as we are seeing today. I mean, when we did our prediction. But the fact remains that if our predictions were heeded by relevant sub-nationals, we may not have been where we are today. But I'm believing that following this year's flood disaster across the land, the consciousness of relevant actors in government, especially at the sub-nationals where this thing takes place, will be awakened to do the needful once they receive all these advisories. Like I said always, ours is mere advisory. We can't enforce. The state apparatus is there. The state at their own levels have the necessary apparatus to do enforcement in the event any person violates. I'm in Abuja, and I know what is happening here in the FCT. The directive given by the Honorable Minister of the FCT to relevant agencies under his watch, and they're taking several actions, which that I'm aware of. So, much as we may not have seen it all, as it is being unveiled, adequate warnings were released at the right time for people to act upon.
Okay, well, let me quickly ask you, Dr. Abdullahi. I don't know if you can speak to how far-reaching, how serious, how peculiar the challenges we have on our hands, especially, well, as you have heard engineers say, across the length and breadth of the country. How precarious is the situation so far? Dr. Abdullahi, that question is for you, sir. Okay.
Okay.
I believe we have some
Mr. Aribabu, the DG of hydrological services did refer to other climes where most times people don't even go out without listening to the weather forecast. In our circumstance, how important do you think it is for us to listen to the weather forecast if there is any weather forecast being given? Sulaiman, are you with us?
Now, please.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Yes.
Growing this country, we used to have the NTA tell us weather predictions, and medium and new do make some reference. But a matter of fact, anybody who uses a smartphone is likely to get information about but we are not attuned to paying attention, to weather forecasts, weather predictions. It's part of what we are God, and we do not appreciate the fact that God has blessed humanity with knowledge of science to guide our everyday life. And so we really need much attention, to weather predictions. The question asked of Dr. Abdullahi, and I've been a bit of it. I've gone to some states in the north in the last 3 weeks, and I can say that the flooding is quite devastating. And no doubt, food security for Nigeria is threatened going the next, because this is the time when farmers are supposed to be harvesting. There is nothing to harvest. The maize fields are overwhelmed, the rice are vegetable. There is massive flooding. I was flying into some of the states, and you think it's the Sahara Desert that's taking water. That is, but I believe that was water. That is the extent. So our agriculture, because really we pay a lot of attention.
But, Mr. Ribabu, I think we need to work a little more on the audio, because, as valuable as your contribution is, we can barely hear you, but we'll work on that and get back to you. But let me go back to Dr. Abdullahi. Well, Mr. Ariba, we have tried to begin to answer some of the questions, the questions from his own perspective, in the agricultural sector. But talking to the seriousness of the issues at hand, we mentioned earlier the extent of the flooding all over the place, beyond, food shortage, the loss of property, loss of lives, loss of, things like that. How serious is the situation? And are there any data to the things that have been happening to us that you can point to?
Thank you very much. You agree with me that the flood of 2022 has been very devastating. If you are asking for data as it stands today, I will tell you it's still an ongoing process. This flood occurred in states of Jigawa, Kano earlier in September. Kogi State, Niger State are having a feel of it now. And this water from the River Niger axis is going down to Delta, Anambra, down to Rivers Bayelsa. From the River Benue side, it had an effect in Adamawa, Taraba, down to Benue. So what I'm saying, Excellence, is to give you a specific kind of data now will be misleading. But I'll tell you that it's an ongoing effort. Staff of the agency are on the field. as they carry out rapid assessment of needs, we respond to the victims first by providing immediate need, which is food and non-food. It is when the water recedes that we can assess this community and will now look at post-disaster needs of the people. This impacted communities will even have some destruction, which we term intangible losses. People have had their palaces washed off, their house schools losing properties, records are destroyed. You cannot put a price to some of this. So, in a nutshell, effort is ongoing to respond to the need of the affected community. But post-disaster need assessment can only be carried out when all stakeholders can assess this community. Thank you.
Ms. Tanze, I know that your agency, as well as other agencies, have been screaming since the beginning of the year, even before the rains came along, talking to us about global warming and the effect it was going to have on the rains this year. From what you have seen happening, in spite of all your shouts, do you think that Nigerians actually believe that there's global warming? And do you believe that they actually prepared for the rains with all the warnings that you gave?
I think I believe that Nigerians have come to terms with the issue of global climate change. Going by what is happening at various localities. For instance, I think I was in the studio, one of the studios with the deputy governor, that's the NTA, deputy governor of Jigawa State. He made reference to this, that a particular community for over 54 years in Jigawa State has never witnessed the amount of rainfall that he did in 2020. That was sometime in September. To him and to us in this field is a confession of the fact that it's global change or global warming is real. For instance, Jigawa, a place that is supposed to receive about 800 millimeters of rainfall all through the year, received more than half of that 800 millimeters of rainfall in about 2 days or 3 days. That has severe consequences. That when you allow heavy downpour by way of rainfall, that ought to have been spread over several months, now you receive it, the earth receives it in a few days, a few hours. There will be heavy overland flow, runoff, which generates flooding or results into flooding. So it is a reality, and there are many places in Nigeria that are talking about it. However, I have to caution, we shouldn't attribute everything to climate change. That is to say, when we fail to do what we ought to have done, we say it is climate change. There are certain things we should have done at the right time. That's taking me to the other part of your question. Earlier in the year, we've been going from one place to the other, we've been talking to people, to the media. Sensitizing the nation. I keep making reference to the states, the subnationals, where the actions are taking place. It doesn't seem that adequate attention or necessary responsive actions have been taken by way of adherence to early warnings that were issued by relevant agencies at the federal level. It doesn't seem. Like I mentioned earlier, we may not have stopped what is happening, and I'm sure it will still continue for some weeks within this year, 2022, going by what is available to us. what we are seeing. We may not have, no action could have stopped it completely, but it could have reduced the magnitude. Several lives, over 300 have died. So, like you mentioned in the introduction, maybe 500,000 people displaced. There could have been a reduction in all these figures. Thank you.
You know, one of the things that also comes to mind, Dr. Abdullahi, is the spread of the issue at hand. As you heard engineers say earlier, the Hydrological Services Agency predicted more floods this year than last year due to excessive rainfalls and contributions from external forces, external flows such as the dam in Cameroon and all of that. Naturally, these aren't just going to go to states, they're going to go to local governments and, you know, perhaps overrun or run far more than they ought to at any given point. From the feelers you are getting, you know, from your representatives all over the country, what kind of reaction do you get from governments, the state governments, and the locals in the various communities?
Yeah, let me start by saying, after the NIMET prediction and the annual flood outlook by NISA, NEMA had an expert meeting of experts to discuss the disaster management implication of these predictions. These were communicated to all state governors, stating local governments that are likely to be inundated with flood water. Like the DG NISA said, the agencies at the federal level are not resting on their oars. But what is important at this stage is for state government to take responsibility, because these communities that are inundated are part of a particular local government. This local government is an integral part of a state. The alerts were released. The state government owned the apparatus of the State Emergency Management Agency, Local Emergency Management Committee, where they do exist, Minister of Environment, the Town Planning Board, the Waste Management Board, to mention but a few. These are agencies of government that should, by way of taking responsibility, come to the forefront before this water overflows community. I give you an instance where Kogi is in the news. Most of those houses that I know are inundated towards the Ganaja axis of the town. These are houses that were approved, if I'm correct, by agencies of the state government. If this warning has cascaded to the people that need to know, it is expected that as soon as the news of flooding occurred upstream, these people should evacuate to higher ground. But it's unfortunate this information we're giving out. We try in our own best way through our zonal, territorial, and operational offices to visit these states and ensure that they give the message to the community. But we need political will to drive this process at the subnational level. So it's unfortunate the flood has happened. The people are being moved out to safety in some cases. Some have done self-help to themselves, but the federal government is responding and providing immediate succor to these people. And it is hoped that with the lesson that will be learned from this flood 2022, the political will be strengthened at subnational level so that to avert this kind of occurrence in the future. Thank you.
Mr. Aribabu, we already had issues at the beginning of the year, and then the Russia-Ukraine war compounded the problem even more. And then we have all this flooding problem now. Food prices had already shot up. All this has now, like they say, had climbed on top the problems that we already had. How is this affecting food production? And how is it going to affect food prices as we approach the Christmas season? Mr. Aribabu?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. We can hear you now. Yes, go ahead.
Alluded to earlier, already this is affecting food availability. So food security for Nigeria is going to be an issue because harvest period where farmers, and you know, many of these farmers are actually seasonally unemployed. They look forward to what at the season, keep life till the next rainy season. Now, many of them across the states are already disillusioned. They have lost all that. Across gets up to Nasarawa State, Taraba State, Bauchi, Anambra, Delta is coming to it's there's going to be food scarcity because availability is an issue. The fuel that is available, the prices will skyrocket the more. So, federal needs to right now, if there's any reserves in the strategic reserves of the federal government, this is the time. This is the time that you look at relaxing some of the laws around import for certain essential, because flood has affected the grains the most. It has affected like maize, like sorghum, like rice. And this also go into production of feed for the livestock sector. So there's a lot of challenge. Food is going to be expensive, unfortunately. No one part of doom, but this is our reality. And it's also annoying that these predictions was already given to us early in the year by those, saddled with that responsibility. Unfortunately, necessary follow-up actions were not. Now, say that usually about flooding as just mere saving lives. Saving lives is critical, yes. Giving people early warnings, look. After, how about their livelihoods? How about their farms? How about the properties that are destroyed? So especially for the farm, people can to relocate the farms, but things that they could do to reduce that on agriculture. For instance, with appropriate warning at the right time, with government support, with the right knowledge, farmers, for instance, can determine, okay, maybe I will not plant this. Or if I want to plant maize to be the window. And all of this, NIMED gives to us, they give us crop weather calendar, gives us variety. So, okay, I'm going to, this is when there's going to be icebergs, when there's going to be flooding. I can avoid some of this. So with knowledge, with information at the right time, farmers can reduce the risk. They can there is a farmer in Nasarawa State who has been doing well with rice for the past 3 years. This year, he went to borrow money, planted rice with 10 million naira, has lost every single inch of his farm. And you have many of such across the country. How will many people after the water risk? What is government to do at the federal, at the state, at the local government? What are we going to do? Most of these farms are not insured. Climate develop. So many of these farmers are going to be desperate and they are going to be left on their own. We may be reacting the scenario of T12 when the federal government then, after the incident, threw 17 billion at the problem, and you ended up in a situation where some farmers were giving 500 naira. So no matter how small your agri cooperative is, 500 naira can never help you, never hold you for one day. So this is the kind of situation we are in. We know that this is the era of climate change, and like Mr. Nze said, climate change only exacerbates some of the fault lines with us already, but can still reduce even the impact of this climate, the intensity of rain that we saw. We can still reduce the impact. You have a situation where the Lagdo Dam is released, where the Tika Dam in Kano is released. Of course, increased the flash. It's flash flooding. We saw the flooding coming. We knew when it reached certain places, we knew it was going to get to Delta. How did we go ahead of the flooding to help the people? These are the things we need to be asking us. And I quickly intervention in case I don't know if it's going to come back to me.
Okay.
The Nigerian media has been doing a lot in trying to bring attention to some of these issues. But I want to say that the Nigerian media and this medium, the channels that as a leader bring of importance to the people, should make the issue of this kind of incidents, flooding, the way they centralized, for instance, the issue of the Ukraine, the issue of COVID, we should remove the surprise element. We knew it's going to be flooding. We stay with the issue till as it gets everywhere, so that everybody can be informed, so that people can make demands at duty bearers. This is very, very important. Let us stay with the issue till we, as much as we can, reduce the impact,
Yes. Yes. Engineer Nze, as Mr. Aribabu said, this matter needs to be kept in the front burner. Is your agency making any effort to ensure that this remains in the front burner? Because a lot of, lives have been lost, properties have been lost. Is there any effort to keep it in the front burner? And if possible, broach the topic of Nigeria having a flood management policy?
Okay, thank you so much. On the agency, the Nigeria Hydrological Service Agency have been making a lot of effort to bring to the front burner the issue of flooding in Nigeria. The agency is in constant communication with the presidency through the supervising minister, Honorable Minister of Water Resources. A number of times we have received correspondence from the presidency as to what we are doing, and then the next effort or what still needs to be done. I recall some time ago, based on what the agency has been doing, Mr. President issued a directive to the Honorable Minister of Humanitarian Affairs to bring together relevant ministries, agencies, and departments to seek for a way out of this problem. And some ministers, over 8 of them, or about other 8 or 9, we are together, Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, that actually anchored it, Water Resources, Agriculture, Information, Interior, and we made a presentation at that meeting. The outcome of it is the decision that has been taken by the Federal Executive Council with regards to flooding in Nigeria. You're talking about policy. That policy is in progress, being worked upon, and it actually has come up, is the implementation of it. Also, knowing that like Dr. Onimode mentioned, these things are happening at the state level, local governments, several communities in local government. We have approached, the NISA has approached is making effort, contact with the Nigeria Governors Forum. At that forum, it is easy to get all of them at once. And as we speak, it remains on their agenda in every meeting they hold, especially at this period. So that if we can discuss with them at that level, we are believing that going by what we are seeing this 2022, the devastation of 2022 will add impetus to whatever they have been trying to do before to ensure that the message gets down to the grassroots, to ensure that actions, physical actions are taken. Where you need to put drainages, they should be put. Where you have to demolish houses, like in FCT, I think at the counters we discussed, over 700 have been removed. Whether you call them houses or shanties that have been impeding the free flow of flood that have been removed. The governors, they become apolitical with regards to flooding because it doesn't know, it knows no political party. And good at it, they are working on it, trying to seek for a solution.
Okay. Well, talking about
to reduce the impact.
Okay.
The impact of flooding is not only affecting the food security, even national security as a whole.
Most certainly. Engineer, let me ask, just a second. Let me ask Dr. Abdullahi. Now, talking solutions now, Dr. Engineer has mentioned the fact that, maybe some houses need to be pulled down and all of that. But the sentiments that people attach to their property is also something significant in our culture. I mean, you would understand. It's our fathers, this house was bequeathed to us by our forefathers and down through the generations, 5, 6 generations away. And so we can't just vacate our homes. And that's on the one hand. Add that to the fact that perhaps there is a need for governments at various levels to do one thing or the other for the people. At the end of the day, it all comes down to communication. How we communicate with people to ensure that they understand what the implications are and to be able to give up things that they hold so dearly to, emotionally, sentimentally, and all of that. In terms of communicating it to the people, because these floodings don't particularly affect governments. At best, it indicts them. So in terms of communicating the issues to the people, from the federal level to the state levels to the local levels, just as you mentioned earlier, what should we be doing going forward?
Like I said, it is normal for people to have emotional attachment to their ancestral home. But which one do we prefer? Let go what you love and be alive, or stay where you think is your ancestral home and go with water. I think the latter is better.
On that, Engineer, your doctor, just a second. On that issue that you just raised, you also know that government has been largely untrustworthy, in a lot of respects. There are those who would say government just wants to remove us here so that they can take over our lands. So that's why I'm talking about the communication of, this intervention to the people in a way that they will understand and appreciate the issues there.
I agree with you that if these messages are carried to the people using the right channel, government will not just sit at the state capital and say, town A, you have to move from this river bank. But go to these people, sit with them in a community or a town hall, let the community leadership, town union leadership, understand what you're talking about and make provision for where you want to move them to. Assist them to resettle. I'm sure Nigerians will want to believe in our government. Then I want to please quickly comment on what the last speaker said concerning losses by a farmer and what federal government is doing. I want to place it on record that flooding is not totally negative, because if you do early cropping with high yielding and early maturing variety of crops, you can harvest even before the onset of flooding. And when flood comes with its residual soil, it carries a lot of nutrients. People can actually go back after flood and still plant early maturing crop. It may interest you to know that since 2019, the federal government of Nigeria, with the approval of His Excellency President Muhammad Buhari, GCFR, has given NEMA some assistance, inputs to give to these farmers. This includes early maturing crops, high-yielding crop, agrochemicals and other inputs, including fertilizer. And most recently, the federal government through NEMA distributed water pumping machine to these farmers so that their farming can be all year round. When you do the early cropping, you vacate the floodplain, move to highland. After the flood, go back and do another cycle of cropping. It is possible. However, this will still need a lot of information from our political leaders to these people who live around the riverbank.
Especially because
if we must make our farmers move and give way to flood water, we have to go down to the end user and the locals for them to believe what we are doing and leave those places.
Absolutely.
Another rider to it.
We're running out of time, Dr. Abdullahi, so, forgive me. Let me just take one final word also from Mr. Aribabu, who is, in that constituency, your farming that you're talking about. So we have just about a minute to go, Mr. Aribabu, so let me just ask you this straight up. In terms of the interventions, the federal government's intervention to farmers, you heard, Dr. Abdullahi talk about it. What would be your recommendation? What should the farmers themselves do? It's not like it's easy to move your farm out of the path of the flood. So what would be your recommendation to the farmers themselves, irrespective of what government does or doesn't do?
Thank you. I will advise farmers. I say farmers, we need to, the bulk of the food we eat in this country is grown by smallholder farmers, many of whom do not even have access to this kind of information talking about. But for those who do, and for the extension workers who work with them, is to avail ourselves the opportunity of the early warning provided by warning without corresponding advice on what to do or how to do it is like pushing people into paranoia. And that's the reality in places. We give warning that there's going to be flooding. We should also give them the knowledge that, okay, if this is a period of flooding, this is the kind of crop that you want to plant. We want this crop there and do another one next year. When we give all that kind of information, we should also then give them access to what we are asking them to plant. Never alone cannot reach everywhere. We need states, we need local governments to act, we need every stakeholder to come to the table. And we need this, right now as it is, I'm going to plead with the federal government, the state, and see what can be surveyed, what is not able to survey. At least let us make sure that these farmers are not discouraged into going back into farming right after the flooding has receded. It's very important that we keep our farmers going.
Well, as my partner has said here, it's an issue that has to be kept on the front burner if we're going to get ahead of it and make sure this does not lead us into food or nutritional poverty at that. I have to thank you very much, Sulaiman Aribabu, Secretary, Header Resource Center. Thank you so much for your time, along with Dr. Onimole Bandele Abdullahi, who is Director of Special Duties, National Emergency Management Agency, as well as Engineer Clement Nze, who is DG, Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and for the education this morning.
Thank you.
Well, that's the first one done. Right after now, go to another topic. Please stay with us.
You like it, baby. You know you're on my way. Driving in the goddamn rain. Driving in the goddamn. Driving in the goddamn rain.
Thank you for staying with us this morning. Remember that we were wishing teachers happy Teachers' Day at the beginning of the program. Well, we are still talking teachers, and we'll be focusing our attention on the quality of teachers' training. I mean, yes, they are teachers, but they have to be trained before they go and teach, don't they?
You have to train the trainer.
Train the trainer. Now, they are the prime players in the education of students at every level. Teachers can be described as the live wire of the education system at all levels, and they are the most important element in any educational program. Well, to help us appreciate the work that teachers do, and to tell us or discuss with us this morning the importance of the training that they have to receive before they go into the classrooms to impart knowledge, it's my pleasure to welcome the CEO of Lani Group, Mr. Ani Basi Ayo. Hi.
Good morning, how are you?
Morning, good to see you again.
Thank you very much.
And we have
Happy Teachers' Day.
Happy Teachers' Day to you. We also have Bola Onime, who is Chairman, Lagos Island Chapter of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria. Thank you for joining us, Bola.
Morning. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Mr. Ayo, you are a regular on this program. Let me begin with you. I know that by and large, teachers in Nigeria have been disenchanted, and we have had this conversation with you before. Is there any improvement in that area? Are they getting a better deal?
Okay, good morning, Alero. Thank you for having me once again on Sunrise. It's always nice to have me on your program. I'm going to be speaking in perspective of Axiom Learn. It's a private sector company, and it's a company that trains teachers. So I'm not talking from the view of government. I'm going to talk from the view of a stakeholder with emphasis on training teachers in Nigeria. The answer to your question is yes, there have been some improvements, particularly post-COVID. We have realized that we can no longer wait because waiting costs money. And during COVID, we saw that learning costs in terms of economic, in terms of healthcare, and more important, in terms of educational learning gaps. So there has been more concerted efforts, even by this administration of President Buhari. And one thing I must say that has come out well in the last 8 years is that teachers have finally have increased retirement age and increased welfare packages, all being in the course of being implemented. So on that hand, I would say there is some no longer lip service. There's some sort of thing going on around teacher welfare, and welfare is very intrinsic to training. But before I delve further, I just want to put things in perspective. When we talk about teacher training, there are two aspects to teacher training. There's the aspect of pre-service, that is the quality of training they get before they become teachers in the classroom. That's before they become accredited teachers. Now, they go through the National Colleges of Education, and they do a qualifying them with the Teachers Registration Council, etc. And then on the other hand, which is really where we have a larger problem, is the continuous training of teachers in service. And you probably might be surprised to note that teachers are actually the largest profession in Nigeria, in fact, on the continent of Africa. We have at the moment about 3 million registered professional teachers. Do we have enough continuing professional development programs for them? The answer is no. And why is that so? We know that teacher training has largely been delivered through public sector budgets. The budgets have been broken for 2 years now, and we just don't have the numbers. 10, 15 years ago, when we had the MDG's office running, and we had the then Special Assistant Haji Amina, who's now the UN's Deputy Secretary General, we had larger programs, mass training of teachers. We don't have the funds to push that. So there now has been a paradigm shift. And it's one of the things we really are trying to advocate for, that the teachers themselves must be able to own their training, must be able to own their continuous professional development by being able to pay for training. But I want to say something. We really have COVID and the digital disruption provide for us a very interesting opportunity. The interesting opportunity that lots of this training now can be virtual. So,
well, Mr. Basieyo, I find it very interesting when you say that the teachers should own their training, and I couldn't agree more. But then when you look at their take home, it raises a lot of question about their capacity or ability to do that. But I'll come to you. Let's take the opening comments of Mrs. Onime as well on this conversation. Well, you are part of a personnel management system, so you understand the challenges that the teachers themselves have to go through. Well, any employee, specifically speaking to teachers now. Speak to us about the management of this class of personnel from what you have seen, whether at the state level or at the federal level, Nigeria generally, or Lagos State where you operate basically. What is your understanding or your take on the general perception of teachers by the people who supervise them?
Thank you very much.
Could you kindly unmute, because we can barely hear you? Okay, well, we'll come back to you, madam. So let me come back to you, Mr. Ayo. So speak to that issue that I raised about the teachers owning their training. It is, virtual, you say, so these things can be at their own comfort and convenience and all of that. But if they are to own it, I don't know if it's okay to ask you to explain what you mean by them owning it. Does that mean them paying for it, or them taking the lead in ensuring how it goes? What exactly do you mean by owning it in the context of their take-home generally?
Yeah. Most important thing, when we look at issues like this, issues of transformation, issues of change behavior, let's try to walk away from money. I know money is important. I did raise the issue of broken budgets in the public sector. The key thing is always visioning and leadership. And what we're saying and advocating for is that we must allow and strengthen the capacity of the teachers to own their continuous professional development, because they understand the classrooms they are in. They understand the peculiar situations and circumstances that surround them. So let me explain further. You can't just sit as a Commissioner of Education and say, oh, we have 5,000 teachers in my state. I want to train them on mass communication skills and leadership. When maybe this is, you're talking about Kaduna State, and in Kagoro local government, there's a prevalent issue around special needs. And it would have been better that if it was more of a bottom-up approach, we would have certain teachers building up the capacities in special needs education and disabilities. So we need to strengthen, and we can't just leave them on their own. And this is where we need to support the financing of those programs. We need to support them understanding their own needs evaluation, particularly through head teachers. When we talk about teachers, there's also something which is ongoing now by the Teachers Registration Council. We've seen that we can't just say that teachers are a homogeneous group of professionals. In Finland, we have expert teachers. We have, same thing like in South Korea. So what's happening now with the Teachers Registration Council and our company Axiom and some other stakeholders such as UNICEF is strengthening that reclassification of teachers, so we can have head teachers, expert teachers. And what this will do, it will force these various genres or cadres of teachers to be led by a head teacher at a local level that understands their needs at the classroom and therefore strongly drives the continuing professional development. There are more players that need to come to the ecosystem. Banks need to be able to give loans for career development. The federal government should be able to facilitate career development, just as we've had CBN provide real sector funding. I think it's time to have real sector funding in the education sector, so that teachers can maybe access maybe a year, 200,000 worth of career development loan, and they can choose a provider, whether it's in-face or virtual. And that is one way by us being able to place it back in their hands. And before I just close on that comment, we found that a lot of our teacher training is also being led by foreign donors. And it's not right. The foreign donors, as the USAID, the DFIDs and co, often come with their own perspective and their own development agenda. So it is us, and it needs to be done from grassroots. The teachers must own it. The players, the Parent Teachers Association, the students themselves, it should all come in to the needs evaluation so the teachers themselves are able to ascertain what they need and therefore go to the right provider. So I hope I've clarified that issue about ownership, which is very pivotal to the change in how teacher training should run in Nigeria as a country. Thank you.
Well, having gone on for so long, I mean, you know all the things that you needed to do over the years. Most certainly, you know, the persuasion is there. Let's check back on Mrs. Onime. If you can hear me now?
I can hear you. You confirm if you can hear me.
Oh, most certainly. Jolly. So, okay. To the question that I asked you earlier, your assessment of the general training system or apparatus for teachers, be it nationally or Lagos to be specific, if that's what you would prefer to do, because I mean, many people go to schools, the public schools in particular, and they're asking questions. While the qualifications and all of that is there, the general attitude to the students and the students that come out of schools leave so much more to be desired.
Okay, so thank you once again for having me. And as has been said by my co-moderator or my co-discussant, it's as he said, I wonder why it is that we do not pay as much attention as is needed to training. You know, in the private sector is now learning and development, because we understand if you learn, then you develop. And if you do not develop, then what lecture, what knowledge do you have to pass across to people? When you look at it, the budget that goes to education, the budget that goes to learning, the budget that goes to training is usually the rock bottom where you feel, okay, let's just do it. Even as much as ITF is trying to encourage organizations that once you train your staff, you get some particular percentage back. So that way, everything you're paying to them as a body is not lost totally. But for Lagos State, yes, I think there's been some measure of improvements, because when you look at, I think the last result that came out, we saw a 60% pass, which prior to that, I think we had a 38%, though my figures can be reconfirmed. I'm not absolutely sure. I'm on national TV, I have to be careful here. But I think there seemed to be an improvement from what we had. And as I said, probably because of COVID, people had opportunity to train themselves. And it grieves me where if you need to get the kind of training you need, you have to do it out of pocket. How many people can actually do that? How many people can afford to train yourself? And whatever training our teachers have is what comes out with from the products that we have. I work in the private sector. We get to interview students. We get to employ them. And I know some time ago, Lagos State had a program where students in SS2 and SS3 had to come, you train them, prepare them for the workplace and all that. And even as on CIPM, we do advocacy visits to schools. This way we get to gauge what has been done. You know, we may not have absolute authority on what is being done in schools, but then we try as much as possible to come in to help, because if there is intervention from the private sector, it would help. Teachers, if the government doesn't do it, if you look at the economy, how much money can they take out of themselves?
Well, madam, yeah, my apologies for butting it, but you know, one of the questions that come to mind naturally is, do you think we even give enough recognition to the teaching profession, knowing that every profession has to go through a teacher? From the nursery school, primary school, children begin to learn how to draw little boxes. These little boxes are what eventually form the architects. You write numbers, you write letters. These are the things that writers and several other professions are made of. So in the general context, do you think that governments or the authorities across board give enough recognition, enough reverence to the teaching profession?
Absolutely not. I'm sorry, it's so sad, but no. In my opinion, from experience, from what I've seen and what I've known, no, they don't get enough. Now we look at the medical profession, but then how do doctors come to be, if not through the teachers? Now we are talking about IT saved us during COVID, but if there had not been enough teaching of the IT profession, how would they have come to be? If anything, for me, I think if you look at it from the hierarchy, teachers should actually be at the top. If they should come to the top, they should be at the top. But what the recognition they get is not what is required. It is not enough.
Mr. Ayo, with COVID, teaching took a different dimension. A lot of children now had to be taught at home. So teachers had to have acquired other skills apart from just teaching, because they now had to teach using the digital platform. How much of that training, which they require now, is undertaken by them, and how much is acquired by the employees, the state governments, or whoever?
Okay, so I heard my Mrs. Onime speak, and I just wanted to say something. I think one of the things I would take back to our partners in the public sector is that they don't showcase a lot of what they're doing. I know they are doing a lot of work at federal, at state government. I don't know about local government, because my company, we don't really interface at the local government level. We work with subnational and national. So in terms of recognition, before I answer the question about digital, there has been a lot of efforts on recognizing and professionalizing the profession of teachers. We now have the Maltina Challenge, which is an annual prize. And even last year, a Nigerian teacher was a runner-up at the Global Teacher Prize, which is part of the Vaki Foundation. It's run out of Dubai, and it's $1 million prize. So I have seen a lot of improvements on the teaching level. There's so many NGOs and strategic companies like ourselves that provide and help solve the problem, along with players and actors on the public sector side. So there has been definitely more recognition for teachers than before. However,
perhaps
there's still a lot of work to be done.
Yes, my apologies. Perhaps it's because you are in the sector. I'm sure you will come back to my partner's question earlier, earlier thrown at you. Perhaps it's because you pay attention to the sector, because you know what is going on in there. But perhaps some of these, things that you have talked about that are being done are few and far between. So what then would be the ratio, in your opinion, of this intervention and impact of the intervention across board in the profession?
Okay, so I'm still going to come back to Alera's question about digital, because that's important. But I think it's I think, when I started, I said that it's almost like we're operating in silos, and we don't know what's going on in but I say the public education sector, because that's really the larger part of the education sector in this country. Some of the analysis and statistics coming out has shown our teachers' recognition to even be far above our peers in South Africa. I'm talking about statistics here. So we're nowhere near where we should be, please don't get me wrong. But we are certainly far better than where we were 10, 15 years ago when the MDG started, and realized that our teachers were very poor quality, and that the issues of retraining, welfare was not done. Like I've just said now, teachers' welfare package have been increased. They can now retire at age 65. I don't know if you're aware of that. It was signed up by the president last year. Their salaries are being increased. So there are things happening, clearly. It's not the same. It's a moving ship. And those indices show that at both state and federal, there's a movement. And some states are doing more than federal. So at the federal, you can see institutions like the Teachers Registration Council, led by Professor Josiah. They're doing fantastic work with UNICEF. They're professionalizing the sector. You have the National Teachers Institute, Kaduna, who are doing a lot of work. These are two institutions I can say, and obviously UBEC, UBEC, who are doing quite work. Yes, there's still more work to be done. So because of time, I'm going to now jump to Alera's question. And if you feel there's still some things you want me to answer, I'm happy to do that after. But Alera, you were absolutely spot on. COVID created a confusion. The confusion was not just in the education sector, it was global, it was far-reaching, it was a conundrum. In Nigeria, we had a webinar, Pan-African webinar led by our education business, Axiom Learning, in March. And we had about 1,300 participants join that. At that time, none of us all around the continent even had an emergency plan for education because it had just hit us in the face. But I would say that a year on, 2 years on, that there are certain good things that have come out. There's been a lot of innovation around software for teaching, and there's more on the learner side. I think that there's been a lot more improvement on the learner side and learner support. So you have software, you have things that help facilitate learner learning and experiences. However, on the teaching and instructor side, we've not seen a lot of that come out through the door yet. Again, it's led by the economics here because teachers are expected, they're not the ones that pay for it, unlike learners where the parents would pay for those things. However, I sat on a committee at the Teachers Registration Council with UNICEF, and there was a program put in place to train 30,400 teachers across 16, 17 states on the use of digital learning in times of disruption. So what are times of disruption? It's not just COVID. In the southeast of Nigeria, we've had a disruption because of the Monday strikes by IPOB. So think about it, out of 5 days a week, we've lost 20% of learning time over a year. And you're not having a war situation, you are not having a COVID situation. Those are times of disruption. So what we're doing now with TRCN, with NTI, with partners like UNICEF, Save the Children, is developing programs that build the capacity of teachers, particularly teachers in the rural areas, to use digital devices safely and correctly.
Okay.
We've trained on cyber crime, cyber security. Even during COVID, we used radio as an instruction. We implemented the nomadic curriculum for education in 2014, and that curriculum is fantastic because we use what we call interactive radio instruction, and that was also used during COVID. So there are so many ways that we Nigerian government, along with the private sectors, along with development partners, have upscaled, I would say, over 100,000 teachers, which is still small, but it has happened.
Okay. Well, Mrs. Onime, speak to the welfare of teachers from the teachers' perspective, from the supervisors of the teachers, and from their paymasters. What should we be doing? I know that Mr. Basio, would have his angles to this as well, but you're into personal management in terms of how that workforce is managed. Speak to the elements that need to be developed in order for us to have a sustainably successful teaching profession in the country.
Okay, so thank you very much. When it comes to welfare, it is applicable to everyone, whether teacher or no teacher, but for them, looking at how strategic their role is to the country at large, because you can imagine where you have an uneducated environment, an uneducated country, is a whole lot of trouble. But in my own case, I feel first thing is they should be comfortable enough. When you have an attractive pay that you can get people, you can imagine someone with a master's degree, someone with a PhD, and you're willing to go to a primary school to teach, and it's a government primary school. There must be an attraction for you to, maybe you have the pay is good, it's commensurate to the class of work, because teachers' work for me is a class A. So once the pay is commensurate to one, you will be able to attract the best brains. I don't see any reason why I want to go. Even if I'm an IT professional, I would love to go into the teaching profession so I can share my knowledge. And you can only do that when they know that, okay, once I'm going there, then I won't be poor. Most times they will tell you teachers are the poorest, but that shouldn't be. So we'll start from the pay. And when they get into the pay, then how do you sustain it? You sustain the pay and you make sure that continually their knowledge is replenished. whatever are the changes globally, and I would say globally because now we're in a global village, and everything we do should actually be, globally localized. Though you're in a local environment, but you should also have global knowledge where they or the children that they are being taught can compete in the global environment. And you can only do that when you have teachers. So you can imagine students in private school and students in public school, and they are going into the same world. We're doing a great level of disservice if our teachers are not globally enlightened. So training should be really, really important, should be continual, and should be immediate. Once there are any changes, then there should already be programs where teachers are already selected to go on and learn, as it is done in private sector. Once there's a change in product, change in services, change in policies, before you know it, employees in that line have been nominated to go get training and get on top of it so the business can continue. This same thing should be applied to our teachers. And we'll talk about retirement. Now, we need to look at it. It's neither here nor there for me that you're retiring at 60 or you're retiring at 65. How much strength do they still have? Are we supposed to make their retirement comfortable, or we make them to work for longer? I don't know. That is an intellectual discussion that needs to be had. But if as retirement, you have a price to pay, then I can encourage my child to also go into the teaching profession. When you ask now, how many people want to be a teacher, you can imagine the kind of response you would get from students. So you start from making them comfortable while in the profession, while they are there, make sure continuous learning is available. Training trainer, any new changes, policy and curriculum reviews, continually, so they can compete globally. It's a global world now.
Okay.
Thanks to COVID, it happened faster than we thought.
Okay.
So now everything is global. And after that, make their retirement comfortable, make it beautiful. Is it housing plan?
I'm sorry, Mrs. Onimele. We ran out of time about 2 minutes ago.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mrs. Bolanle Onime, Chairman, Lagos Island Chapter, Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria. And we also had Mr. Annie Basi-Ayo, CEO, Lani Group / Axiom Learning Solution, who have come to talk to us today about the quality of teachers and the kind of training that they get. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Just before we go, happy Teachers' Day again.
Remember your teacher. Just remember your teacher and say thank you.
Exactly. Thank you for staying with us. Sunrise will be right back with another interesting conversation in just a moment. Stay with us.
Yes, that's why we have the Arise Women Conference 2022 on our list again today. Of course, by now, you should know. If you don't, let me tell you. Arise is a faith-based non-governmental organization committed to accelerating nation building through the empowerment of women in the society. Arise is a motion to propel the women to economic gain and power. Arise has touched thousands of women through its skills acquisition and empowerment programs and has been passionate about the health of women in the state. Well, just a second ago before we came on, Valera was reminding me that it's the awareness month for
cancer.
For cancer.
Cancer awareness month.
But I don't know if that's part of what the Arise Women are going to be doing. Let's just...
Why don't we ask them?
Exactly. Well, Mrs. Iyabo Ladipo is chairperson 14th Annual Arise Women's Conference. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having us.
We also have with us Michael Ilega as well as Enke Uboruche, both of them team members. Thank you so much for being here. Truly appreciate your time. Madam, so let me ask you that question that she said I should ask you, no?
Well, one of the important pillars of the Arise theme is healthcare, and we're particular about preventative healthcare. So cancer screening is one of the things that we do. We actually
There you go.
So we
I just asked.
is one of the
There
things.
you
So we
go.
have a medical, during the conference, we have medical screening going on. And one of the things that will go on this year as well is breast cancer screening. It's actually Breast Cancer Month. Specifically, October is usually breast cancer month.
That's why I asked her, and she said I should ask you. I'm innocent of all charges.
But I believe we're here this time more about the walk. First for the walk. We'll come back after the walk to talk on the conference.
Other matters. Other matters arising.
It's only the healthy that can walk.
Yes,
So.
exactly.
So, but let's give us a general understanding or overview. It's 14th episode, you said, of this conference.
My colleague NK.
She has the answer to that
will
question.
Talk us through on the walk.
Yeah. No. We'll come to the walk, but a general overview of the conference.
Of the conference. Okay. So this is the 14th edition. Arise is the brainchild of the convener, Dr. Shidri Luyomade, and she is particularly passionate about women, about nation building, about health for the families, for the entire family. About so many things. Schools, Arise has gone to schools. Arise has built, we've adopted villages. Even as in the north, and we've put in boreholes. So we're interested in health. We put in boreholes. We've put in the schools, in some of the villages that we've adopted, we've built libraries, we've built hospitals, we've had babies born in our Arise clinics, even in the north. We run clinics in Lagos. We have outcare patient services where we attend to those that are sick. We've run up, we have a Arise Farmers Initiative, again in the north. We have had, concerning health, like I said, we're big on preventative care. So Lagos State has partnered with us to give us the vaccination center. So we're vaccinating after COVID at our centers. We've had people come to speak to us on COVID. We have a skills empowerment academy where we teach skills so that women are empowered to help themselves and help their families. And
that's quite a list.
It is quite a list. It is quite a list.
Well, since the walk is one of the items on the conference.
Yes, it is.
You want to give us an overview? What are those things that you expect in the conference this year?
All right. The Arise Walk for Life initiative is one that is firmly hinged on one of the United Nations Sustainable Goals, which is health for all. And like she said, we're focused on preventative health, which means activities that can prevent you from coming down with anything that may want to, like a sickness that wants to come to you. And one of those, which is one of the easiest, is walking. And that is why we have that as one of the main things that we're doing. And so next Saturday, which is the 15th of October, we're having the Arise Walk for Life. And the beautiful thing about this year's own is that the theme is appointed to live. And that means each of us have a mandate to own our health, to be in charge of the narrative of our lives. So if you can walk, even if you have other interests, like we have things like football, we have cycling, we had a fantastic golf tournament yesterday, which was really successful. People turned out for that. Any form of sport it is that really excites you, we've put that in the package as well, And the beautiful thing about it is that you don't have to, you can do it from wherever you are, under our very unique system, which we have called the cluster system. So we have clusters all over the world. We have in America, we have in Asia, we have in South Africa, even in Nigeria, we have in various parts of Nigeria, in the north, in Abuja, and in the east as well. So wherever you are, you can form a cluster of a few number of people and take part in the Walk for Life, which is happening next Saturday.
Michael, I'm sure you don't have just one cluster in Lagos. So since we are talking in Lagos,
sure.
And I mean, people who are watching now may want to join the walk on Saturday. So where are the clusters in Lagos?
Thank you so much for having us once more. Before I go into the details of all the clusters that we have, I think we're
there's so many.
There are lots of clusters, not only within Lagos, in the wider nation of Nigeria. We have clusters in Akwa Ibom, in Abuja,
yes.
Across other continents. I think we have in about 4 continents or so. We have clusters And this all started from the pandemic a couple of years ago, because what we normally did was, when we have our walk for life, we come in one neutral location and then we walk in one direction and then that was it. But the pandemic came and, you know, we couldn't gather like that number, you know, for safety. And our convener, Dr. Shiju, she said, you know what, one of the main goals, as my colleague said just now, was preventive healthcare. We need to exercise, we need to keep fit, you know, which would actually battle this virus that is going about now if we maintain a healthy lifestyle. So we decided that, look, we don't need to come to one location to actually exercise from wherever we are, because we have people from our partners from all over the world, they couldn't fly down. So Dr. Shiju said, you know what, wherever you are in the world now, do your own walk. Yeah. So it was from that initiative that she started about 2 years ago, so that people in America, people in the UK, people in other, you know, other nations of the world wanted to be a part of this. So they have registered their clusters, they formed, and a cluster is basically a group of people. We have clusters, we have companies that form their clusters. Yeah. We have estates that form their clusters. We have neutral family members that form their own clusters. And a cluster can be 5 to 25 people, you know. And
I was maximum 25.
Maximum 25 people is because we're trying to have as many as, and we have a lot of people that have registered, because sometimes we have an example of, we had a cluster in Surulere, I think last year, but they were so large that they had to form several different clusters because they wanted to be a part of this activity. And we have so many clusters, as you said, in Lagos, in different corners of Lagos. People also create their own clusters from new as well. And all this information is on our website at arisewomenng.org.
Okay. Suppose I live in an estate now and there is no cluster in my estate. I want to begin one this year. And there are about 10 of us. What do I do? Do I have to go and register my cluster?
We had this exact situation last Sunday. A gentleman approached me and he said he was based in South Africa. So he said, you know, there was no cluster. And we said, you know what? He was going to form his own cluster. And as of right now, he has his own cluster. He's gathered a couple of people. So what we do is you log on to arisewomenng.org. You fill in your details. You can either choose to join a cluster, or you can choose to form your own cluster. So you can have families that maybe they want to work together. You can have companies that want to work together. So all of this is on our website. Once you register, you will let us know if you're forming a new cluster. And anybody else that wants to now join a cluster has the option of either joining your own cluster or forming theirs as well.
Maximum 25 people. Yes. Keep that in mind.
Yeah. Madam, is there a specific... Because if I want to walk, I could just organize members of my family without registering. So is there a specific advantage to registering, you know, to form a cluster?
Your cluster.
Or is it Michael that's going to answer that question?
Michael.
Yeah, Michael.
I thought you were going to. I thought Michael was going to. There's a very good answer to it. There's a very good advantage.
I will take this one. I'm very excited about it. I'm very happy about it as well.
Why do I feel upset myself?
Oh no, it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
It's a good setup.
One of the main reasons it's very important to register is this year, to encourage everyone taking a part of this, we have special prizes for best clusters, and we have a criteria for picking a best cluster. I'm only going to speak on one of the criteria because we have a lot of information that is on our website that people can check out when they go there.
What's the website again?
The website is arisewomenng.org.
Arisewomenng, one word.
Thank you. .org.
Arisewomenng.org.
Yes.
Go ahead.
And one of the main reasons is we have some prizes for the best clusters this year. The first prize, or let me start from the third place. The third best prize is $1,000 to be shared across that particular cluster. The second best prize, people. Yes, sir. The second,
you want to do your calculations?
The second prize for the best cluster is about $3,000, and the first place prize.
Drum rolls.
Drum roll. If we have, I'm sure the media will give us something for the best cluster is about $5,000, and one of the great things we had last year, we had people that there's a particular couple that they've never set foot in Nigeria before. But because of how they found out what the Arise women were doing, they formed their own cluster. I believe they're in Greece or so. They had sent us their videos. We had actually posted their shirts to them. And one of the most important things for each cluster is to ensure that they have their Arise t-shirts. And as you're seeing us, we have different shirts on. I'm wearing the long sleeve, the track suit. We have the long sleeve. We have the short sleeve.
You're wearing the
we have
youth,
face clubs.
I'm wearing
for us younger people, which I'm sure I can share with you guys here today. And one thing I was going to end on is we're hoping that Sunrise will have their own live cluster next week Saturday.
Right?
These are the t-shirts. These are the face caps. We have different selections. And
on your website,
on
right?
the website. So you can make a selection here. We'll send it down to you so you can be a part. And we look forward to Sunrise forming their own channels, TV cluster next Saturday to have a chance of winning these prizes.
To have a chance of
winning. I think it's a great deal, you know.
Michael,
yes,
you
ma'am.
haven't told us one criterion yet. Because the clusters would like to know what they can do to win $5,000.
No, the first criteria is you must be wearing this year's edition of the Arise t-shirt. And the face caps. There's a whole lot of details because we need the pictures, we need the videos to be sent to us during the walk as well, because we know everybody is across the world. So that's why we have steps that you can follow on our website where you can, once you register, we would communicate to us because we need to have the details of each cluster. So once you register, we have all your details. We will now get in touch with you.
How much?
Absolutely free. It is
sending
absolutely
this
free
all
to
over
register.
the world for free.
No, the t-shirts, no, the details for the cost of, on the website right now. So the different t-shirts and the long sleeve, the short sleeve, they're different prices.
Different prices,
So you can let us know what you want and we'll get it to you before Saturday.
Okay.
And you really didn't need to come.
I was so excited because I'm sure you will want to win $5,000.
Okay, so these are the details
and
on
if
the
there are
website.
just 25 of you, can you do the calculation quickly?
I know. Some people will just have to go, they'll travel.
And it doesn't have to be 25, it can be less than that.
No, I would rather even have 5 people win $5,000. It's easier for everyone concerned. Okay, well, madam.
Yes.
At the end of the day, you know, for you, the objective is what is achieved.
Yes.
What are the objectives for this conference? I know that you've said, you know, it includes a walk, it includes, you know, breast cancer checks all across, and maybe one or two other things. What are the objectives, and why? Because there's those who are not really interested, may not be interested in the prizes, the T-shirts and all, but they're interested in the objectives, in the exact thing that the Arise Women Conference was set out by your team and the entire organization to achieve.
Well, the main objective is for the progress of our families, the sustainable progress of our families. And we believe that when a woman is well placed, well educated, knows how to protect her family, is empowered herself, we begin to move the entire nation. I mean, we've heard it before, but the truth is that we really need to do it and sustain it. A lot of times, women in particular, women's health care, women are the ones that are busy looking after the family, they're looking after everybody, and they just suddenly drop dead. Because they're not doing what they need to do to ensure that they live long lives, live good quality lives. We're interested in the sustainable goals. Of the goals, we've been particular, we give out what we call buckets of hope. We give out the Arise bucket. It's called the pink bucket. The pink bucket.
I was going to ask if you brought pink buckets along this year.
So we'll put Michael in the pink bucket.
We will be back. We surely will be back with our pink buckets. So we give out pink buckets of hope because they have food in them. So we're trying to eradicate poverty. You know, these goals look huge, but if everybody did something, we would be a lot better than we are. When we empower on skills, we have people that were empowered in our training sessions. We empowered them, say, 5-6 years ago. They are trainers now. They produce, they train and they train other people. So we've lifted families. We can actually see people and families that we've lifted out of poverty. Because we've equipped them to feed themselves and to feed others. Yes. And then they come and train others. And every year there's a ripple effect. And it keeps going on. And the aim is to finally, well, improve the whole world, let's say.
Exactly. Now, NK, Arise is doing a lot from what she has said. I mean, the list is as long as my arm.
Or longer.
But we don't get to hear a lot about this. She mentioned what you all are doing with farmers in the north. Who is aware of that? There are many more people who would like to come on board if they knew what was going on. So, is there any grand plan for more communication of what Arise is doing and achieving?
All right, thank you so much for that question, because
so that's the question that gets your own blood boiling. Okay.
Because, you know, when you make impact, you know, our convener is very big on impact creation. The direct people that are impacted by these obviously are, you know, they understand what it is that has been put in place for them. And
they do the PR.
Well, I mean, the best PR is experiential PR.
Yes.
When you have gone through that experience, you can tell it to the world what it is that you've been through. But that being said also, we also have channels where all of these have been put out there. So it's just for people to go to through the right channels to be able to see more of this. And the website is one of them, which Michael has mentioned.
AriseWomenNG.org.
And our social media platforms.
I'm sure the farmer isn't going to go to no website.
That's where experiential impact comes into play. So that farmer goes to other farmers and talks about it. What's most important is that the impact is being made, lives are being transformed, and that is the goal of the Arise Women Initiative.
Okay. Well, Madam, in closing, because we have just about a minute or two from what my directors are saying, the dates again, and is there a specific venue for a specific event?
Okay. So on the 14th, yesterday we had the first golf tournament at the Koi Club. It was a huge success, and we believe we'll continue to do that every year. On the 14th, we're having a football tournament when we're going to have
the legends of the Super Eagles. They will be playing
I need you to tell
together. I'll go in that. That's fine. The legends of the Super Eagles will be playing on
Super
the 14th.
Eagles, okay. Super Eagles. That was before That was after Shegun Odebami. Because I was going to ask you, Shegun Odebami is playing.
I know.
That
we've
was
had
Green Eagles.
No, I know we've had a lot of.
I said after.
The legends of Super Eagles, people like Daniel Amokachi, Peter Rufai, they've been longtime partners of the Arise Women institution for many years. We're going to have a football match with them this coming Friday. I think that's the 14th. As well as we have trials as well for younger people that want to take part of this.
You know, Nigeria, I mean, you just have to start the football. And
We have a special we have a special arrangement this year because we want to sponsor one or two very, very talented individuals to go to a particular academy, I believe in Spain, to further their career.
You haven't answered the question of where.
Where?
Onicon Stadium, I believe. But we need people to send us their details to our website first because we need to have
Onicon Stadium.
Yes.
So Onicon Stadium, 14th
of October. This Friday.
Saturday, the walk, 15th. Conference, 29th. Conference is at Trinity Towers. We're going to be the first big user of that huge multi-story edifice at, what's the address again?
I think it's Yusufu Abiodun Road.
Off Ligalia.
COD Road?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I don't know.
29th.
Yes.
If you know how to block your dates, please block it out on your calendar right now. That's how you
register for the walk and your cluster as well.
And your cluster and everything. All the registration.
Hashtag is appointed to live.
All the information. It's like Michael doesn't want us to close the segment. We're closing it right now. We have to thank you very much for being here. Mrs. Iyabo Ladipo is chairperson, 4th Annual Arise Women's Conference.
14th,
beg your pardon. I saw 14th, and I'm
14th.
So the 14th Annual Arise Women's Conference, as well as NK Boruche and Michael Lega, both members of her team. Thank you all for being here.
And the website is AriseWomenNG, one word, .org.
Yes.
AriseWomenNG.org. That's where you can find out all the information that you require. That's where you can register for the walk. That's where you can also put your name down to go to the football match on Friday.
Thank you.
And they say you want to win awards. But they spoke about lifestyle.
Yes.
Well, that's another thing we're talking about after this break. Stay with us.
Thank you for staying with us. I'm sure you've heard this expression many times, that there are no bad children. There are only bad parents. Oh dear.
I have a question mark on that. Is that bad parents or bad parenting?
Exactly. It's not bad. It's bad parenting. And that's different. Exactly. Those expressions are very different. You can be good parents and still not parent your children properly. You can be good people, rather, and not parent your children properly. But at the end of the day, the children are yours, so the buck will still stop at your table regarding how they turn out at the end of the day. Parenthood, they say, is a thankless job, but you have brought the children into the world, and guess what? You have to, after bringing them into, you have to bring them up. So they become your responsibility, and whatever they make of themselves at the end of the day will be traced back to you. You know, these millennials, they're a different cup of tea altogether. But I'm not going to make any comment. I'm going to leave it to our guest, who is a family life consultant, Mrs. Motolani Falabi.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Let me start by asking you, what is a family life cycle? I saw that and I've been trying, even though there's some explanation, I still don't understand what it is.
Okay, so when we're talking about family life cycle, you're talking about from when the child is born, from when this child is beginning to work, from when the formative years, basically to the teenage years, to the singlehood, where this child is planning to be married to someone, and then they eventually get married, and then they move into parenting, and then they transition into being grandparents themselves, and then retirement.
And then they
basically.
die.
Yes.
Okay. All
right. And all those are different stages of humanity, of human life. So from when you're giving birth to when one, finally dies.
Now, let me ask, does this ring a bell? I saw was it a video or a photograph of the human being from crawling? He stands up, he walks straight, and then he bends.
Again.
And then he goes back and he crawls again.
That's a cycle.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
And it's a reality that, it's scary to look at. And just as you said, those realities happen different phases of life. But the interesting thing here, and this is where the question is coming in, is that at the time of birth, life, society, the environment is in a particular way or in a particular state. But as you grow older, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, things change. Things evolve. So how you were parented would naturally be the children. As a child, you can't expect your children to be the same way the way you were. Consequently, parenting syllabus has to change.
Of course.
Because when you were growing up...
There's no manual for it.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying. When you were growing up, the iPad was a slate.
Tell me about it. Because my children have always asked me,
how did you guys cope?
What kind of games, what did you do when you were a child? There were no video games.
They had a typewriter.
There was no color TV. You had nonsense black and white TV. And it closed at 9 o'clock or something.
And opened at 4 p.m. You didn't tell them.
What did you all do?
Okay.
I said, we played 10-10 and we listened to Tales by Moonlight, wretched people.
So it raises questions around parenting because the parents weren't raised on the things they are raising their children with. How much of a challenge is that in terms of parenting?
First of all, parents need to know that times have changed. The world has moved.
Well, we know.
Well, they try to move because they get computers and they teach themselves how to use the computer, but the kids are still way ahead.
So when I hear parents make statements like, these children have changed, it's not the children who has changed. It's the world in total that has changed. And now you need to move with that trend. So for mommy now, I didn't meet slate. I didn't get to use slate.
You don't even know what it looked like.
Well, I know chalkboards, but I'm not sure of slate. I'm not sure that I use that.
Okay.
So then they use typewriter. Okay, please.
And you don't know what a pen holder is or an inkwell.
Come on.
That's what I'm idea.
That's ancient. No, it's not just history. It's ancient history.
I'm a dinosaur.
So a slate was like, say, 12 by 6-inch tablet. It's wood. It's black.
When you say tablets, they're wondering I'm sure they're thinking about something else.
No.
Our tablet is right from your tablet.
Something like this.
It's like this.
Okay.
In wood.
It's the same shape as your tablets. Okay. On one side, you have A, B, C to Z, and 1, 2, 3 to maybe 10 or 20.
No, sometimes it's blank.
Yeah, on the other side,
and you do the writing on it.
On the other side, it's
with
black.
chalk.
So, yeah, then you write with the chalk. The chalk is the stylus. What your stylus today. So now you know. You can go look for it. But then the slates they use in their generation were not as intelligent or smart as what we have today.
Intelligent.
So those tools have changed.
Yes.
So many things have changed. The grandmas today are wondering what's all this technology about. But they have to raise children in this environment. How much of a challenge is that?
First of all, we as parents need to understand that, like I said earlier, the world has changed and the world has moved. That we are aware that it has moved does not mean that we now know how to navigate it. Oftentimes, we want to talk to our children, rather, or relate with them how we were parented. We want to parent. It wouldn't work that way because times have changed. You need to understand that they were born into technology. So you give a 1-year-old baby your phone. He would unlock your phone. It's just 1 year. You didn't even have a phone until probably you're 30 or you're 40 before you even have an idea what a phone is. They were born into this technology. So you want to pay attention. You want to begin to observe. You want to learn again. I think one of the things that is happening with parenting is to just feel, it's just parenting. Especially when you tell people to take parenting courses, they tell you, just to parent. It's not a big deal. Parenting is now a big deal because what parenting used to be when you were giving birth to, most of our parents were home. Maybe father goes to work, the mother was always home, taking care of the children. But now mothers are also working, fathers are working. There's really no time. So it's important that parents now start learning. There is an intentionality in learning, even observing, to say, my child is showing me certain traits. What trait is this child showing me? And what am I picking from this? How do I script my child based on what I am observing from this child? And that's why I say there are certain stages in the life of a child, or rather with parenting. So the first one would be for you to scout. At age 0 to about 3, you're checking your child. What are the traits that my child is exhibiting that I need to pay attention to? At that tender age, you would see that some of them are very good with technology. They could already operate a lot of things. Some of them are already showing that they're musical. Some of them show different types of skills that they want you to pay attention to. So when you're scouting at age 0 to about 3, from 4 to about 6, you're modeling. This is where you want to build the values into them, because I hear parents say, oh, this generation has sports. You are grooming them. They're coming up from your house. And then I believe that family is the production factory of the society. If we say that our country is corrupt, it means that our families are corrupt.
So wait, just a quick one. On the 4 to 6 year old, when you talk about...
You're modeling.
Modeling.
After you're scouted from 0 to 3 to see what I observe about my child, then you're modeling certain values into that child at that age.
In what way? Because there are those who believe that, he's just a child, he wants to cry, he wants biscuits, give him, he wants chicken, give him, and all those things. So when you say modeling, exactly what are you talking about?
So a parent says, my child is done eating and he leaves his plate on the table and doesn't pick it. Mommy, you are done eating, you left your plate on the table. These are things you model. It's different from one family to another. So it would then come to, as a family, do you have a family vision? Do you have values to say, these are the values that drive everyone from this family? So these values are what you begin to model. Do I want to teach integrity to my child? So, you know, growing up, when someone comes to the house, your mom will tell them I'm not home. And then you come back to say your child is lying. You modeled lying to that child. You want your child to laze on a bed when they are up from the bed. You model it. They come into your room. You do the same. You begin to teach them, because children will do what you do, not what you tell them.
The child may go and tell the guest, my mother said to tell you that she's...
This generation of children.
Well, you know, because they don't even know how...
They would even question you. Say, Mom, why do I have to go lie?
Exactly.
They'll question you.
Now, still on this matter, I mean, I'm talking about modeling. Just for someone, you know, listening right now, watching and wondering what we're talking about. So this child is used to hearing mommy say, Nkechi, come and carry my plate. Will the child also call Nkechi?
Most likely, that's what the child will do.
So if mommy tells Bayo, take your plate to the kitchen and come, Nkechi, come and carry my own.
That's exactly. See, it's modeling. So this child, so I've had a case where a parent says, oh, I don't like how my daughter talks to people. She's so rude. The first question I asked is there someone in the house who does exactly the same? And then, yes, there was someone. See, the fact that you have helps in the house, they are there to make life easy for you. But they are also there to mentor your children, if you allow them to. So the values that you want to impute in your children, regardless of what the helps are there to do for you, you model what you want your children to become. Okay. Regardless of the help.
We really do. I wish we had more time to discuss. But you know, let's speak about teenagers, young adults, and the rest of them. I've seen enough movies to say the child goes into the room, slams the door on the mother.
And then you are thinking, that can't be my mother, you're finished.
That can't even be my child. Your life will not remain the same again.
At all. You will get backhand.
So in terms of discipline for these kids, in terms of discipline, you know, it would seem that generally, you know, the young adults today, teenagers, they just don't have legs. They just do it the way they want and all of those things. Because some get it on Twitter and they are watching and seeing the way the conversations are going. They're wondering, what kind of generation do we have on our hands because of the mode of communication and all of that? Is there a reason for that? Is there a way to reverse the trend?
I work with a lot of teenagers, and oftentimes when parents come around, they say, oh, my child is so rude, oh, my child is this. Before that child became a teenager, the child passed through you. There's some certain things, certain values that you should have imputed in the child that you have not. But let's say that we're here. Oftentimes we say teenagers are rude, they don't pay attention, and they don't want to do what you ask them to do. But as parents, sometimes we also don't treat them as humans. So your daughter is in her room. You barge into the room and say, oh, I need you to do this for me now. She has a day planned out. You were not in that schedule. But because you are the father or you are the mother, you feel like you have earned the right.
Slow down.
So just barge in.
Slow down, slow down, please.
Forgetting that this child has
Mrs.
plans.
We're talking about a room in my house.
That's what we're saying.
For
in your house.
Paying the rent.
Of course.
Okay. In my house.
I understand.
Chopping my food.
Of course.
Paying school fees for you.
Of course.
You have your day planned out.
You know, but
Who
really,
the holy?
things have changed. You cannot use the old curriculum for the new generation. You're using the old curriculum.
My daughter.
So we should give them leeway.
That's not what I've said.
Oh, okay.
My daughter at 15. Wait, my daughter at 15 say, Daddy, if you know what I'm going through, I say, eh?
What are you going through?
Which house rent are you paying? Which school fees are you paying?
But they're going through a lot themselves. They're going through stuff.
Help us understand that.
No, what are they going through?
Seriously speaking, help us understand it, because that understanding is lost on many people, many parents.
Many parents.
So being on the one, because the parent has a life to live. The parent has to contend with, you know, the economy, provide for the family and all of those things. And now I have to contend with this kid. So maybe because parents don't understand what the children are going through, they are not able to really understand what's going on. I asked you to do this for
like
your
I'm
sake.
paying all the bills. What are you doing? What
So
are you worried about?
Help us understand what the children are going through and what parents need to factor in.
There are a whole lot. So I'm going to give you a series of examples as they come to me. So you have a teenager who just joined school, is probably struggling to, settle in. And oftentimes parents, oh, I want the best education for my child. And then you take your child to a school where majority of the students there are all rich kids. They can get all the things that they want when they want it. They have drivers bringing them. This child probably doesn't have the same because you have just struggled and managed to ensure that this child has the same education as this other student. Now, there are certain things that you have not discussed with your child to say, I have done so much to ensure that you also get this level of education. But there are certain things. So these students come back and say, oh, some of my friends, they went to Dubai for holiday, they went this for holiday. You can't afford that. You can only get this child to school. But you're not even sitting to have a conversation to say, this is the reason why we cannot do this. So this child is asking, Mommy, when are we going on vacation? You say, which year? We're not going to any vacation. Do you even know how I'm paying your school fees?
Go to the village.
Please, we'll just go and greet your auntie that stays at Ilupeju and all of that. And then this child, she cannot understand it. They can't. Because you have not had a conversation. The child comes to say, Mommy, I want this. No explanation as to, I cannot afford this now. And this reason is because of 1, 2, 3. You just said, no, you can't have it. Now, this child goes back to school. Peer pressure is coming in, setting in, to say, how do I ensure that I also get these things that my friends... It's a whole lot. Sometimes it's academics. They are reading, not because they don't want to read, but they are. It's just not getting in. You know, one of the teenagers said, you don't understand, I'm reading so much. I read a lot. But then I get into the exam hall, I'm just anxious. I can't get to write all the things that I have read. That child doesn't come back home and you're shouting. So with all the money I'm spending, dude, that's not what the child needs. You probably want to sit with the child to understand exactly what is happening. Could it be fear of the teacher who taught them? Could it be examination anxiety? Do you want to get professional help to say, how do I help my daughter through this? And sometimes it could be the hormones. They're teenagers. A lot of things are changing in their body. They don't understand. And you are not even having those conversations with them. So I have a teenage, she used to be a teenager, she's an adult now. She's in medical school. She's in her room. She could read all 12 hours. And then my mom would then say, oh, this girl is so lazy. I told her, no, that's not laziness. You want her to do the things that she's not interested in. You are not having conversations. She's read over the night, and in the morning she's sleeping. In the morning is when you come, and then you live in an environment where if you want to buy anything, you need to walk like 5-10 minutes to get to any shop whatsoever to buy whatever it is you want to buy. And then you barge into her room and say, oh, I need you to stand up and go to some place and buy me something. And she's saying, Mommy, I need to sleep. And you're saying, what, did you breastfeed a baby overnight? And they are always having issues. And I had to sit both of them down when I said, see, this is a challenge. You both need to agree. What do you want me to do today? Mommy, let me factor you into... But parents just feel, no. It's my house. I feed you. I do all of this. You hold me your life, and they know. True. They are also humans, and we need to respect them.
Okay. It's a pity that we are running out of time completely. But the long and short of what I have gathered from what you have said today is we need to have conversations with our children in this day and
time,
age.
so that we don't slap our truth
Not
on
like
them.
when we were growing up, conversation.
Who is conversing?
Who are you? Converse with you. I give you the order and you do it.
Otherwise.
So that time is gone. We need to converse with them.
That's why they call them Sorosuke generation.
Opinion. These millennials.
You can slap.
It's all right.
Well, we
will try not to slap.
You can slap your truth on them because they want to have a conversation. So you tell him, stand up. He wants to understand why.
He will ask me why.
Let's just close this conversation like this.
Sorry, time. I mean, our time is up, but we have learned
we have to continue the conversation.
We have to bring you back sometime because this has to be continued. Thank you very much, Mrs. Motolani Falabi, Family Life Consultant. Thank you very much for coming. You have opened a can of worms, I promise.
I'm happy she didn't say we'll close. Why?
We'll be right back with the home stretch. Stay with us.
Show me love. Show me love. Baby girl, show me love.
The cat is out of the bag, so that's our guest for a week. So no more suspense, as it were. You can see our Artist of the Week, one of Nigeria's most celebrated filmmakers and directors, currently enjoying rave reviews. And I was just telling him and my partner here that before I watch a Nigerian movie,
check out who's directing.
Who is directing? Afolayan, CEO, Golden Effects Pictures, thank you so much for your time and for being here this morning.
Thank you for bringing me.
Let me begin with a congratulations.
Thank you.
On Anikulapo. In fact, thank you for putting the sign, because some people will be saying it's Anikulapo.
It's not Lapo.
It's not in the pocket.
Okay.
But
now,
even though
what
Akpo
does that
is a pocket,
word mean? Anikulapo.
No, Anikulapo.
The death is where?
In the pouch.
In a pouch. It's not in your pocket. It's in the pouch.
Yes.
Even though the pouch is a kind of pocket.
Pocket, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But it's detachable.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Ah, you can detach it. Okay. Yeah. I get it now. I get it.
The message of Anikulapo, for those who have, I don't want to give spoilers.
Yeah.
But
have you seen it?
Oh, I couldn't not have seen it.
Okay. Netflix?
Yes.
There's a friend of mine who said, have you seen, I was watching out for it even before it came. But it looks like this is the backstory.
Yeah.
Tell us about the build up to it.
Well, I mean, again, thank you for inviting me. I started working on Anikulapo 6 years ago.
Wow.
And I was going to make
2018,
2017. And, you know, I wanted to make a series because it's a story that I feel, you know, will stretch like Game of Thrones, for example.
Okay.
And I shopped the idea around, you know, we already structured like 10 episodes, you know, and then it was called Odu, the Parable of Tales. I'm sure that you might not know what Odu is, but it's like Odufa, you know,
like codes.
Yeah, of Ifa. Okay. So now the backstory of Anikulapo is a verse in Ifa. It's one of the Odu in Ifa. And I said to people that, look, we read Bibles, we read Quran. If you flip the Bible and just open it and you see maybe Matthew chapter 1 verse, when you read it, it's a story. All right? And for me, I thought, look, we've really like missed out on telling our stories, you know, the way they should be told. I've seen a lot of, you know, American films trying to tell African story, and by the time you finish, you'll be upset. Me, I get upset sometimes, especially because of the misrepresentation of the culture and misrepresentation of the people.
Yeah.
And I said, look, they have the right to do it, you know. I mean, so why can't we do it ourselves, you know? And then I started building it. But then Netflix, I pitched it to Netflix, and they're like, look, okay, we're not sure this will do well, but why not try to do a film? If the film is good, then maybe the conversation can continue.
Good.
And
I have
then
hopes.
That was it. So
I was going to tell you, I hope there's going to be a sequel.
Yeah, the whole world wants the story to continue.
You know, this thing about telling our own story, is that not the main reason why most of you are in movies in the first place? To tell our own story? Well, because we are the custodians of the information.
Yes.
So we know the story better than anybody else can ever know.
Yeah, but some people are just there to just tell stories. Like if you watch a lot of
films and content on television, we try to be Oyinbo more than the Oyimbos. You know, we create content where, you know, people do car chasing and people, you know, do gun shooting and people do, look, it's lifestyle. It's a, you know, I mean, it's a modern world, but at the same time, area of interest differs. I want to tell stories that, you know, capture values, you know, cultural values, family values, you know, and all of that, but without necessarily neglecting the essence of why we do content, which is entertainment. So I'm always mindful that my content must have, it must be entertaining, it must be educative, and it must be informative.
At the end of the day.
Yeah. Entertaining.
Yes.
So it's, for me, having practiced for 1 or 2 years, I found that the core of content should be information and education.
Absolutely.
And the seasoning should be entertainment. So if content does not have significant information, it will look to me like, you know, there is a problem. So you talked about something that I have considered very, very valuable, and, you know, which is values. Africa is about values. The value of this story, for instance, I found it amazingly intriguing at the end. Sincerely.
Thank you.
Pride.
Yeah.
And it's something, it could sneak in on you without knowing it.
Yeah.
It snuck in on this young man without him even knowing that, you know, it is something that is really happening. He didn't even know he could have it because he was very humble at the beginning.
Yes.
Tell us what informed that choice of value in the story.
Well, it's very, look, for me, I have children, and sometimes I'm always saying to them that I'm not the kind of person who will preach something and do something else. So I preach what I do.
For which reason your child had to be a Makaliki.
Exactly.
We'll come to that.
you know, so, I mean, I listened to the last guest, and, you know, we're talking about family and all that, and I was listening and I was just shaking my head, like, you know, has it gotten into that, you know, where...
It has.
But really, it's true, because, I mean, my children, sometimes I'll be like, let me be the father, let me be the kind of father my father was. But instead I'll be like, okay, in this age and time, you can't do that. Yeah. But then I'll always tell them the stories of where we were coming from. And I'm always letting them know that, look, life has two sides, you know, and all the enjoyment they enjoy now, they need to know, because if you don't, even if they are so fortunate, and I'm always telling them, you're so lucky. And, you know, so these are things that I try to preach beyond the comfort of my home. Look, power, just like they say, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that is one of the issues with Saro in this film. Me, I have no problem with him, you know, enjoying and balladoing himself. But I just have problems.
We need to include that word in the dictionary.
Exactly.
The verb to ballad.
Exactly. You know, but I have problem with, you know, you being blessed or given or being fortunate to have something that you could use, you know, positively for humanity. But then greed, just like you mentioned, the greed comes in. You know, there are people who have things and who have power and who are still humble. And, you know, they do things and they don't even talk much about it.
I don't want to spoil this movie for those who have not watched it. It's been on Netflix for how many days now?
It's just a week.
Just 1 week?
Yes.
No wonder I've not seen it.
No.
Okay. But tell me about this Oscar nomination controversy.
Okay. Well, I mean, for a film to qualify for Oscars, different countries, I think outside of the US, you have committee in those countries who will pre-select and then present the film to Oscars. And I submitted, and I know quite a number of people submitted. And last year when they said no film was eligible,
did they mean that no film was good enough?
I think they have said that was what I wasn't clear about. So I reached out when I was submitting now to say, look, what are those parameters? Send to us. So they send it to say, read this. And then we ensure that we meet all the criteria. As a matter of fact, Anikolapo is supposed to be exclusive to just Netflix. We're not supposed to do cinema. But because Netflix also, would like for us to submit, they gave a bit of window for us to do, because one of the condition is you have to do 7 days at least in the cinemas.
Okay.
Before the Netflix release, or the same day as Netflix release. And Netflix agreed that, okay, go ahead so that you can qualify. So we met all the conditions. So, and then I think it's a 15-man team or something. And I think they went to vote. And if you have films that qualify, why would 8 members of the committee say no film is eligible? So up till now, they haven't come out to explain the meaning of no film is eligible. If you pick one, or you say, because they wrote to us to say you didn't have enough votes, so sorry, your film can't. But no film is eligible. What does it even mean? And they haven't come out to explain that to anyone. And it's just a shame, because this is the first time you're going to have this quality of, you have Election Oba, you have, Ageshe Kole, that's King of Thieves, and then you have Anikulapo.
King of Thieves, yes.
And these are like 3, solid epic films that could have represented the country. So, I don't know.
Well, I guess that will open a completely different conversation in Africa, right?
Yes.
What do you think that is saying? What could that be saying to Africa?
Well, maybe Oscars need to, maybe change and not put our, faith in the hands of a few colleagues who, because most of them are colleagues. And I think that is also a bit, film next year.
Oh, come on.
Some of those things, because if you have like 10 of those or more of the members, the committee members are filmmakers like us, like directors, and some of these directors also happen to work for some of the competing films. So it's a lot of mess. I think
that's an eye opener.
No, that's sounding like some politicking that I don't think.
Of course, absolutely. Of course, absolutely.
But let's get back to the film, shall we?
Yes.
Now, I'll say this, that casting makes the movie.
Yes.
Casting is a skill. You don't just, you can act, come and do it. Oh, you can act, come and do it. It's something that's usually methodic. What informed for you? Because it's not like Anikulapo is a story from the history books.
No.
It's a fiction of sorts.
Yes.
What for you were the parameters that occasioned the choices of those leads, including that Hollywood guy who's Hollywood you changed to Nollywood for a brief?
Yeah. Well, for me, I'm always saying casting is so key. And you're going to have a serious story. And if you have bad casting, it waters down the story. As a matter of fact, it can actually ruin, the entire story. And I've always paid, real attention to that, because there has to be a balance. So for me, the first thing is we have generations of actors who have been around for decades. And for actors, you don't have retirement. And there will always be roles, just like we were joking before, there will always be a role for old people.
Sure.
You know, people in their 80s, 70s, 60s, there will always be, depending on the story you're telling. So I like to balance bringing the veterans, you know, like my father's contemporary, all them Babawande and all, my father's contemporaries.
Yes, I know.
So I like to bring them on board. I like to bring the generation after, all them Ogogo, Dele Odule and all of that, you know, those ones.
And the younger
and
ones.
Then the younger ones, Kunle Remi, Bimbo and all. And then the upcoming, like my daughter, you know, and all of that. So, but if you're doing this kind of film, language is key. So I can't say, oh, because you're beautiful and you're so talented, but you cannot speak the language. I can't force you in. And that's what I say to a lot of young actors these days. And when you talk to them, they try to speak American English mixed with British. So you're not even sure which accent, you know, they have.
It's a Myro-British.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so I'm always saying, so what other language do you speak? They will say, oh, no, I mean, I can try. I said, nobody will now put you in training school for 6 months to say, well, go and learn this language. And you will still not fit in because it's not going to sound right.
Yeah.
So language is very key, you know. Also, of course, looks and all of that. If you have, there was a guy I was considering using for the lead.
Saro?
For Saro, because I had conversation with different people. But he had this big tattoo all over. And I'm like, I can't be covering this tattoo every time we want to film. So that automatically even disqualifies you, even though you have every other, you know, thing, the looks, you can speak, but I can't deal with this tattoo because they're going to open your shirt a lot of time. So these are things that actors need to always factor in. You know, if the tattoo is minimal, or I mean it's small, well,
paint around
you can always paint around. But if it's all over, it's a big problem. You know, so because that will hit into our time, you know, for production, because to cover that can take 2 hours. You know, so we're going to lose 2 hours of the.
Let me ask you. So I'm gonna let her out.
Yeah.
My producer's child identified this child couldn't be more than 10, 15 or thereabout. Noticed the CGI. A child noticed the CGI and said, Mommy, look at this CGI. It's clean. Coming from a child.
Yeah.
Isn't that a filmmaker in the making?
Well, yeah, that is, exactly.
So how did that come to be? Because definitely, of course, no doubt, technology is coming into movies, has come into movies and has to be developed, you know, on and on. It's not something that is common in the country.
Well, as a filmmaker, I try to play down on CGIs. I am not a fan. I like to create real ambience and real atmosphere. I'm not a fan of green screen. But if you're doing this size of production that will have a bit of supernatural power and all of that, you cannot. I can't go and put Ashodudu on somebody and say, and put feather and say, come and be doing like Tales by Moonlight, you know. We've gone past that stage, you know. So we really took a time, you know, to really, you know, study how best to create the Akala bird, you know, and all the CGI was done in Nigeria. You know,
really?
Everything was done in Nigeria. The sound, the everything, and the filming, the production proper. When we're going to film, we try to scout for location, and then I saw we went to Oyo, Komu, my mother's place in Okeogun, Oyo, and we said, okay, let's go and see if we can remodel some houses and all of that. And as we were entering the town, you know, I saw this space because they have mountains and hills and all of that. And I'm like, okay, let's go and check what is here. And we went there, and I'm like, okay, it would be nice to build things against the backdrop of this mountain. And that was it. And then we acquired the space, and we built the entire community, the old town Oyo and Ojumo we built from scratch.
Let me assume that right now there is a population of people in that place.
Absolutely. So now we have, it's called Cap Film Village and Resort. And this is sitting on 40 acres.
Wow.
And at the moment we're doing hotel so that because we struggle with accommodation when we shot.
Let me just ask you this. Anikulapo is a big movie. Any guesses about what it cost you?
Well, because I signed non-disclosure agreement with the partner, I won't be able to reveal that.
I'm gonna let that go.
But a lot of money.
Let me just say that this is the first of a series of interviews with you because there is look, you talked about storytelling. Africa needs to tell Africa's stories.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, Africa's story will be told for it, and we need to avoid that, as much as we can. We're running out of time, but
before we run out completely out of time, I've always wanted to ask you what informed the storyline of Phone Swap.
Okay. Well, at that time, technology was phone, BlackBerry was like in vogue and all of that. And people are always reaching out to say, your films are always so serious. So you're not good at doing anything. And I'm like, I'm a minor, exactly. And I'm like, oh, really? You want it? Okay, I'll give you. So, and the Phone Swap is funny and it's, so, and then BlackBerry was in town, Glow wanted to partner, all of those guys, and we came up with that story. And I just showed people another side of me.
Okay. I'm going to let you go now because my director is shouting in my ears. That's what you directors always do, shouting in the ears of your actors and hosts. For now, we have to thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Throwing light on a number of things. Perhaps this is also telling you on the entire community of movie makers that look, you're going to have to start your own Oscars in Africa. Well, but, I'm going to leave that for another time, maybe subsequently when you come here. Afolayan, CEO of Golden Effects Pictures, filmmaker, director of The Figurine, Irakpada, Phone Swap, October 1, Roti, Irakpada, Omogwo, The Tribunal, the CEO, Mokalik, Swallow, Citation, Anikulapo, etc., mentioned and unmentioned. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
And all the best all the time.
And Kunle Afolayan closes Sunrise for this day, this Saturday, the 8th of October, 2022. We shall bring you a fresh edition next week. Make sure you join us. I'm Alero Idu, wishing you a happy weekend and a happy holiday.
Please forgive me if I'm advertising Anikulapo. It's a super fantastic African story. You may want to do yourself a favor of seeing it for the holiday. It's on Monday, right? Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Bye for now.